When you see something truly awful, you know, a really clear act of malice or injustice, you get that powerful feeling, right? That urge to say that is wrong.
Yeah.
It feels solid, like you're stating a fact about the world, not just how you feel at that moment. But is it? I mean, when you say that, are you actually describing something objective, like physics? Or is it more like saying, ooh, I really hate Mondays? A strong feeling, sure, but just a feeling.
Right, and that tension, that's exactly what we're diving into today. This feeling that morality is somehow both deeply personal and universally true. We're focusing squarely on moral realism. That's the philosophical view that says moral facts and values like, kindness being good or cruelty being bad actually exist out there, independent of what any person or even any whole culture thinks or feels about them.
Yeah, our sources are taking us right into metaethics here, which is really the philosophy about morality itself. What is it? So our mission today is to unpack this moral realism idea, understand its really bold claims about objective truth, and see how it holds up against other big theories like relativism, subjectivism, and even nihilism.
And what's really striking, I think, is just how bold that core argument is, that moral truths just are, objectively. The classic example, and it's a powerful one, is this. A moral realist would say that even if every single person on the planet somehow decided that, say, chattel slavery was okay, was morally good, it would still be wrong. Fundamentally, factually, morally wrong. It's something we discover about the world, not something we invent.
Okay, so if the idea is that wrongness is a real feature of the universe, maybe like some kind of invisible field or force, what specifically is a moral realist claiming when they say something simple, like lying is bad? What does that mean for the statement itself?
Well, they're making three really key claims, and these kind of set the stage for the whole debate. First is cognitive meaning.
Cognitive meaning, okay.
Yeah, and this is crucial. It means moral statements like lying is bad aren't just emotional outbursts, like saying to lying. They actually express propositions, things that can be factually true or false. You're making a claim about reality, much like saying the earth revolves around the sun.
So the big shift there is it takes morality out of the realm of just personal taste, like arguing about whether pineapple belongs on pizza.
Right.
And puts it into the realm of factual discovery, maybe more like science or history.
Exactly. It means when people disagree about morality, they're not just having a clash of preferences. They're having a disagreement about what's actually real, and one side, presumably, is factually mistaken. Then the second component is objective truth. Some of these moral propositions are, in fact, true. And crucially, they're true independently of whether anyone believes them or not.
Right. And the analogy helps here, doesn't it? The gravity analogy.
Yes, exactly. Think about gravity. It existed. It pulled apples off trees long before Newton figured out the math, right? In the same way, a moral realist would say the moral truth that, say, pointless cruelty is wrong existed before any human society wrote it down as a rule. The truth is out there before we grasp it.
Okay, cognitive meaning, objective truth. What's the third piece?
The third is moral knowledge. If these objective moral truths exist, then moral realists believe that humans can actually come to know them, maybe through reason, or through careful observation and experience, or perhaps even through a kind of deep intuition. We have access to these truths, at least partially.
Got it. So those three things together, cognitive meaning, objective truth, and moral knowledge, that's what makes moral realism such a significant position against the skeptics.
Precisely. It really defines the battleground. It stands against a whole range of alternative views.
Our sources do a good job laying out that opposition. So if moral realism is over here saying torturing innocent people is just plain wrong universally, what are the main counterpositions saying?
Well, you've got a spectrum. There's moral relativism, which says morality is entirely dependent on the culture or the specific context. So what's right in ancient Rome might be wrong in modern Tokyo, and there's no objective way to say one is better.
Okay, depends on the group.
Then you have moral subjectivism. That takes it even further down to the individual. Morality is just about personal feelings. It's wrong for me to steal, but maybe it's fine for you if you feel differently. There's no objective standard beyond the individual.
And then the most extreme view.
That would be moral nihilism, or sometimes it's called amoralism. This position basically says the whole idea of morality is just an illusion. There's no such thing as objectively right or wrong. It's all just power plays or personal preferences or maybe evolutionary tricks. Nothing is really right or wrong.
Wow.
Yeah. And the moral realist looks at all of those and says, no, you're all missing something fundamental. There is a real moral fabric to the universe, and it's independent of cultures, individuals, or feelings.
Okay, let's assume for a minute, just for the sake of argument, that these objective moral truths do exist. That raises a massive question, doesn't it? Where? Where are they? What are they made of? It sounds like not all realists even agree on the nature of these facts. Like, they agree there's life out there, but argue if it's carbon-based or silicon-based.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, there's definitely internal debate. Broadly speaking, in modern philosophy, they tend to fall into two main camps about what kind of facts moral facts are. First, you have naturalist moral realism. These thinkers believe moral facts are ultimately natural facts about the world.
Natural facts.
Yes.
Like scientific facts.
Sort of. Things discoverable through observation, through science, through reason about the natural world. Often it's tied to concepts like human well-being or flourishing or minimizing suffering. Things we can, in principle, study or measure.
Ah, okay. So this is maybe where someone like Sam Harris fits in, arguing we can use science to see what actions actually lead to better lives, objectively.
Exactly. Harris is a prominent modern example. But you can see earlier versions too, like Aristotle talking about human flourishing or John Stuart Mill focusing on utility, maximizing happiness. They're grounding morality in observable features of human existence.
Okay, so that's naturalism. What's the other main camp?
The other is non-naturalist moral realism. These philosophers agree moral truths are objective and real, but they argue they aren't natural facts. They're not physical, not part of the scientific world in that sense. Instead, they see moral truths as more like abstract objects, kind of like mathematical truths, like 2 + 2 = 4, or logical principles. They're real, they're fixed, they're eternal, but they're not made of atoms.
Okay, but if I can't touch it or see it or measure it with a scientific tool, how can it still be real in an objective sense? That sounds a bit spooky.
Right, that's a common reaction. But non-naturalists, thinkers like G.E. Moore or Derek Parfit, would argue that reality isn't limited to just physical stuff. Think about the truth. 2 + 2 = 4. Is that physical? No. Does it depend on humans believing it? No. It's just true. They'd say moral truths are similar, real, objective, but existing in this non-natural realm, accessible through reason or maybe a kind of rational intuition. And of course, there are older traditions too, like theological realism, morality grounded in God's commands, like Aquinas argued, or rationalist realism, like Kant, where pure reason alone dictates moral law.
Okay, so there are different ideas about what these facts are.
Yeah.
But what makes realists, whichever camp they're in, so sure these objective truths exist in the first place? What are the big arguments for moral realism?
Well, the arguments really try to connect with some of our most basic, deeply felt experiences about morality. The first big one is the argument from moral experience.
Moral experience, meaning that gut feeling we talked about earlier.
Exactly. When we witness something horrific, we don't just feel mild disapproval like we might for bad manners. We often feel a profound sense that an objective line has been crossed, that a real moral law has been violated. Realism says this powerful, seemingly universal intuition, this feeling that some things are really truly wrong, isn't just noise. It's actually evidence pointing towards the existence of these objective moral facts.
So it takes that feeling of moral outrage seriously, suggesting it reflects something real about the world.
Precisely. And the second major argument, which is often seen as very powerful, is the moral progress argument.
Ah, yes, this one seems hard to argue against.
It is tricky for the opposition. The argument goes like this. If morality was purely relative to cultures or just based on subjective feelings, then how could we meaningfully say that, for instance, abolishing slavery was progress?
Right, it would just be a change in opinion, not necessarily better or worse.
Exactly. If morality isn't objective, then moving from widespread slavery to abolition isn't moving towards a better state, it's just moving to a different state, like changing fashions. But we instinctively feel that wasn't just a change, it was improvement. Real moral progress seems to require some kind of objective standard, some fixed moral truth that we were moving closer to.
Okay, that moral progress argument, it really resonates, doesn't it? It connects with this deep hope, I think, that humanity can actually get better, that we're not just swapping one set of arbitrary rules for another. But if objective morality is so intuitive, and maybe even proven by history, why isn't everyone a moral realist? Why is this still such a huge debate in philosophy? Where does the theory start to run into trouble?
Yeah. The trouble really starts when you try to pin down the nature of these objective moral facts. What are they, and how do we know them? The most famous, and maybe the most persistent criticism is what's known as the queerness problem. This was really pushed by the philosopher J.L. Mackie.
Queerness. Not in the modern sense of the word, right? More like
It's
fundamentally strange or alien.
Exactly. It's an ontological argument about what kinds of things exist. Mackey basically said, look, if these objective moral facts or properties exist, they would have to be incredibly weird entities. They'd be unlike anything else we know in the universe. They're not physical things you can observe. They're not scientific properties. They're these invisible, non-empirical qualities floating around somehow. And even weirder, they'd have to have this built-in to-be-doneness or not-to-be-doneness. Just knowing them supposedly inherently motivates you to act in a certain way. How could a fact compel action like that? It's just odd.
Yeah.
Philosophically queer.
So the critics are saying, okay, non-naturalists compare moral facts to math truths, but why should we believe in these strange, non-physical, action-guiding entities just because our gut tells us something feels wrong? Where do they come from? How do we even access them reliably? It seems like a big metaphysical leap.
It does, and that philosophical queerness leads directly into more practical problems. If these moral facts are objective and universal, discoverable like scientific laws, well, why is there so much disagreement?
Right, that's the disagreement problem. If morality is objective, like 2 + 2 = 4, why don't we all agree on it? Why do cultures, and even individuals within cultures, have such wildly different views on things like, say, animal rights or euthanasia or the ethics of war?
Yeah, the sheer amount and depth of moral disagreement throughout history and across cultures is a serious challenge. Now, the realists can push back, saying disagreement doesn't disprove truth. People disagree about climate change, but that doesn't mean there isn't an objective fact of the matter.
Sure.
But the persistence and fundamental nature of moral disagreements make it harder to claim we're all accessing the same objective reality. It suggests maybe culture or feeling plays a bigger role than the realist wants to admit.
Okay, that makes sense. And then there's what feels like the most modern and maybe scientifically grounded challenge, the evolutionary debunking argument.
Ah, yes. This one really brings biology into the picture, and it's a tough one for realism, especially for arguments relying on moral intuition. The basic idea is this. Our core moral feelings, empathy, fairness, loyalty, disgust, didn't evolve because they were good tools for detecting objective, cosmic moral truths floating out there.
Yeah.
They evolved because they helped our ancestors survive and reproduce. They promoted cooperation within groups, which gave those groups a survival advantage.
So our moral sense is basically just a useful biological adaptation, like having opposable thumbs. It helped us survive, but it doesn't necessarily tell us anything true about the fundamental nature of the universe.
Exactly. The argument is that our moral feelings are evolutionary accidents, essentially. They're true only in the sense that they worked for survival, but they're entirely unreliable guides to any kind of objective, independent moral reality.
Wow. So if evolution debunks our moral intuitions, if we can't trust that gut feeling, then how do we know these objective moral facts, if they even exist? It seems to pull the rug out from under the moral experience argument.
It does. It forces the realist to find some other way of knowing moral truths, perhaps relying purely on reason, which has its own set of problems. It's a very powerful critique.
Okay, we've really traced this intense philosophical tug of war, haven't we? Between this sense of objective moral progress on one side and then these deep challenges about the queerness of moral facts and the maybe arbitrary nature of our evolved moral feelings on the other. But let's zoom back out for a second. Why does this deep dive into the fundamental fabric of morality actually matter for you listening right now? How does it connect to policy or just living your life day to day?
Oh, it matters enormously. I mean, think about it. Moral realism provides the philosophical bedrock for many of our most cherished institutions and ideas. Take universal human rights, for instance. If morality is just relative opinion or subjective feeling, then the idea of universal human rights is. Well, it's just a nice suggestion, isn't it? A popular opinion right now, maybe, but easily tossed aside by the next dictator or the next cultural shift.
But if moral realism is right, if things like the prohibition against torture or genocide aren't just agreements we've made, but reflect actual moral facts,
Then they have real authority. They demand our respect and adherence because they reflect something true about reality, not just about us. It gives those rights real teeth.
right? And it also gives weight to our everyday moral language, doesn't it?
Absolutely. When we condemn corruption or praise acts of selflessness, the realist says we're not just expressing our personal approval or disapproval, we're actually trying to state facts. We mean it when we say something is really wrong, in an absolute sense. Realism validates that kind of talk.
We touched on this earlier, but in the modern world, people are still actively trying to find that objective basis, right? Like Sam Harris trying to ground it in science.
Exactly. Harris, as a naturalist realist, is trying to sidestep that queerness problem by saying, look, Moral truths are natural facts. They're facts about the well-being of conscious creatures. We can, he argues, objectively study which actions and policies lead to flourishing and which lead to suffering. So morality becomes a kind of science of well-being. It's a very influential modern attempt to find an objective secular basis for morality.
So to quickly recap the core idea we've been exploring, moral realism is this fundamental claim that yes, there are real, independent moral facts out there. Our moral statements can be true or false depending on whether they match those facts. And somehow we can come to know them. It's the belief that good and evil aren't just in our heads.
That's the heart of it. They exist, waiting to be discovered, independent of human will or opinion. Hashtag outro.
So this whole deep dive really highlights this fundamental tension, doesn't it? We have this deep-seated intuition, this hope reflected in the idea of moral progress. This suggests objective truths exist. But then we have these powerful scientific and philosophical arguments, the evolutionary debunking, the disagreement, the sheer weirdness of moral facts that make us question if our moral compass is really pointing towards anything real at all or just towards survival.
It's a profound tension. And that brings us to a final thought to leave you with, something to chew on. If it's true, as the evolutionary debunking argument suggests, that our core moral instincts, our empathy, our sense of fairness, are basically just adaptations designed for survival in small, tight-knit groups, then how much should we actually trust those instincts when we're facing incredibly complex, large-scale moral problems today? Problems that have nothing to do with immediate survival in a small tribe. Think about things like the ethics of artificial intelligence, or global climate justice, or complex bioethics. Can our Stone Age intuitions possibly guide us reliably there? Or do we need to somehow discard those evolved feelings entirely and rely solely on pure, cold, dispassionate reason, like the rationalist philosopher suggested, to figure out what's truly right or wrong in our complex modern world?